Shut up and sit down.
Welcome, my friends. I am Simon from Nerd Safari, and if you don't want me to disappear, please remember to hit that subscribe button. But for now, we are here to talk about a movie that may be new, but it's based on a story that goes back 123 years by H.G. Wells. Of course, I'm talking about The Invisible Man.
Let me help you.
You can't help me. Surprise.
One of the reasons why I think this movie was so successful is that it perfectly blends classic monster movies with the modern day. And for example, there's an obvious Me Too theme running through this movie. It's all about an abused woman trying to escape from a rich, abusive man. And of course, nobody believes that she's being abused.
He said that wherever I went, he would find me, walk right up to me, and I wouldn't be able to see him.
And that really feeds into a sense of isolation in the movie. That permeates pretty much every scene that Elisabeth Moss is in. Even when she's in crowded places, she somehow feels very isolated and alone. And a lot of that is down to incredibly genius camera work, where they'll be focusing on things like empty spaces to make you wonder what may be lurking there. But the theme of this movie is not necessarily overwhelming. It does not feel like one of those movies with a really clear political agenda. What they do that's extremely smart, though, is that they put us, the audience, in a position where we sympathize and we believe everything that Cecilia is going through, regardless of whether anyone around her actually believes her.
Are you okay?
He's sitting in that chair.
Now, a lot of that is down to the acting prowess of Elisabeth Moss. And when you consider her back catalogue, you've got Us, you've got The Handmaid's Tale, you've got Her Smell, soon you're going to have Shirley as well. She is cranking out hit after hit, and this movie is no different. At its core, this movie is still a monster movie. The Invisible Man himself is creepy and scary. The movie is packed with jump scares. Now, this movie was originally planned for a theatrical release, but of course, when COVID-19 struck, all of the theaters were closed down. So this movie actually went straight to digital with rentals for 48 hours. And it was probably very, very smart in the way that it rapidly did that to capture an audience who really had very little choice of alternative entertainment. Now, the special effects in this movie certainly use some cutting-edge CGI, but they also use some very, very traditional techniques. For example, there's a scene in the kitchen where Elisabeth Moss's character is being attacked, and part of that is done by pulling her around on wires, part of that is done by people in green suits, but there were also stuntmen hiding in cupboards, and when they were given a cue, they would pull a string to open or close cupboards around the kitchen. Very, very old school.
Where are you? Show yourself!
Surprise.
There are lots of other tiny details as well that you may not have noticed but feed into the overall theme of the movie. For example, Adrian's brother Tom in the movie is a character that just doesn't seem to fit, and they even take that as far as his wardrobe, where the suits that he's wearing in the movie are 2 sizes too small, making him appear even weirder and more awkward. A lot of attention was also placed on the physical locations used in the movie. For example, Adrian's bedroom in the house was actually a living room in Sydney, Australia. They actually used 4 different houses to comprise the house that Adrian lives in to give it that creepy, modern, cold feel. There are also scenes added way after filming ended, but you probably don't notice. For example, there's a scene where Cecilia and Sydney are in bed together in a house, And that was actually filmed in Toronto. What they did though was took all of the decorations from the location that they filmed at in Sydney, shipped all of those decorations, even the wallpaper, to Toronto, and then filmed that bedroom scene there. So it may be a different location, but it looks very, very consistent. Now, wallpaper is one thing, but pine trees are another. They don't grow in Australia at all where this movie was filmed. And there are scenes where Cecilia's running through a pine forest. So how did they do that? Well, they actually filmed those scenes in a plantation where they grow pine trees either for furniture or for Christmas trees. And if you looked at that scene in the daylight, you would see rows and rows of neatly planted trees. So it took some camera trickery to make that look real.
Are you okay?
There are a couple of Easter eggs in this movie. There's one scene where Cecilia wakes up, looks up, and there is a hat and a coat on the hat stand that just don't belong there. There's also a scene where she was in hospital and she sees a patient with a bandaged face where his entire face is bandaged apart from the eyes. Now, both of those are references to the appearance of the villain in the Invisible Man TV show that was filmed from 1933 onwards. Now, I'm only aware of one cameo in this movie. About an hour and a half into it, there's a guard who is killed off, and that guard is played by Nash Edgerton, who you may remember from a movie called The Square from 2008. And he actually emailed Lee Wannell, the director of The Invisible Man, and said, "Please can I come out and film with you and die?" And I guess he got his wish. Hey, do you remember The Wolfman from 2010? No? How about Dracula Untold from 2014? Still nothing? Well, I'm sure you remember the Tom Cruise Mummy reboot from 2017, although maybe you wish you didn't. So those movies were all part of something called the Dark Universe, a shared universe of monster movies, and The Invisible Man was due to be the next in that series. Originally they had Johnny Depp lined up to play the titular Invisible Man, and they had Ed Solomon, who I was raving about recently for Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, who was due to direct. Thankfully, after Dracula Untold and The Mummy both were complete box office flops, they decided to scrap that idea and gave it to Lee Wannell to direct instead. Now, as if the attic scene in this movie wasn't creepy enough already, it was originally going to be even creepier. The scene where Cecilia finds a phone, a knife, and her portfolio. She was also due to find a pile of clothes and her own underwear hidden there. And if you look very, very closely at 55 minutes into the movie, you can still see that pile of clothes in the corner and in subsequent shots. Now, the opening scene of the movie was really important to Lee Wannell. He really wanted to draw the audience in and terrify people from the get-go. That scene originally had some new music written for it. However, Lee Wannell eventually decided to scrap the music and felt that it was even creepier if it was silent with just the noise of the waves lapping on the shore to keep us company, and I think he was probably right. Apparently, some audiences didn't even get through that opening scene before they were too terrified to watch anymore and just had to leave.
I'm sorry, I can't take you with me. I'm not gonna leave you with that thing on.
So there you go. Hopefully we've reassured you that this movie is not going to just fade away into obscurity and that it's worth watching. Of course, I am Simon from Nerd Safari. Please hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed this, and we will be back every 2 days bringing you nerdy goodness. Peace out, my friends.
Shut up and sit down.